Section 308, we have an increase in limit on cover over a rum excise tax to Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. We have an extension of economic development credit for American Samoa. We have an extension of mine rescue team training credit. We have Section 314 is Indian employment credit. We have Section 317, a 7-year cost recovery period for motorsports racing track facility. Section 402, you have permanent authority for disclosure of information relating to terrorist activities. Section 503, exemption from excise tax for certain wooden arrows designed for use by children. I mean, what does this have to do, John, with what was going on? I mean, who would, in their right mind, who would, during a time of financial crisis, think in their head, you know what, I better shove Section 503 exempting an excise tax for certain wood arrows designed for use by children. I better make sure that that gets in this bill to help America not collapse financially. I mean, what's going on here, John?
Well, that's merely the normal political bargaining. Since the bill is so desperately needed, this is the perfect bill to, or felt to be needed. This is the perfect bill to stick all that stuff in, knowing that nobody can vote against it, or nobody feels they can vote against it. So that's just your normal political handouts.
Unbelievable.
So, I mean, the bill was $700 billion, but they had to sweeten it by $100 billion. I've heard some estimates as high as $150 billion in giveaways. That's what patriotism looks like in Congress. So.
I tell you, I keep going back to trying to imagine the kind of human being it would take. Okay, it would take an extraordinary human to look at the face of a crisis and to go around saying that they're being patriotic and that this is what needs to happen, and then in the process they give away lemon drops and lollipops to Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and to wooden arrow companies, and you just sit there and say, what kind of human being, or worse yet, what kind of lobbyists were actually in there during this time talking to these guys, men and women, trying to get them to sugarcoat this stuff and to pack it with a bunch of goodies for people. It's amazing to think that that kind of a human exists. I mean, it's obvious that they do, and jokes about lawyers and politicians aren't there just out of nowhere. There's a reason for these jokes about them, but it's just remarkable.
Sure. Well, on the one hand, though, it's actually the system. The system works that way. It takes $1 million to run for Congress, and that's quite a bit of money for a job that's only, 730 days. So if you divide $1 million by 730 days, and you see how much money you have to raise each and every day you're in office, Christmas, New Year's, Easter, Saturdays and Sundays, you'll see it's quite a bit that
Yes.
you have to make every single day. So, in a way, the system argues for it, and a congressman is supposed to be somebody who brings back goodies home for the good folks at home. So, it's appalling, but not particularly surprising.
It's run of the mill. Okay, let's leave insanity for a minute, and let's talk about an outlined insanity. Ken, but in your estimation, in a distributist worldview, how would we deal with Wall Street, and how would we deal with this crisis?
Well, let's start with the question of money, because I think it comes down to the way we create money. You have to understand that all of this speculative hundreds of billions of dollars were actually just printed up by the banks. We think that the federal government creates money. It doesn't. The banks create money. And the problem is, whenever they make a loan, they actually create that money. Before you sign the note on your house or the MasterCard slip for that burger at McDonald's, the money doesn't exist until you create the negotiable instrument. And so the banks print money. And that's the first problem. Because the banks, we'd like to blame this on greed, but in fact the banks have a real problem. They have to keep lending money at usury to stay in business. So money creation is in the wrong place. It's in the banks. That's the first problem. The second problem is that the underlying economy is no longer there. The real economy, the economy of making things, of giving real services.
Yeah.
That means that there's not enough places for the banks to lend money. The factories are moving overseas, and so the banks can't lend money to build factories here. So they have to turn to other things, and the thing they turn to is speculation. So
Just unbelievable.
They're kind of caught in a bind, you know.
Yeah.
And of course they don't realize that they're in a bind because they don't understand the difference between speculation and investment. Investment is giving money to entrepreneurs, to business people, to ordinary people, to increase the productive capacity of the nation. Speculation adds nothing to the economy. It may make some people rich, but it doesn't add a factory. It doesn't, improve a farm. It doesn't allow you to dig a mine. It doesn't add anything.
Now, a lot of people I'm talking to are confused as to how something that's happening over there, quote unquote, okay, it's not in Battle Creek. It's not in Hobunk Nowhere, Tennessee. It's literally it's in Wall Street. How a bunch of these guys yelling numbers up to people, waving papers and papers covered on the floor, and wearing kind of weird colored suits, and all these digital numbers across screens and weird little letters that go along with them. How somehow that has impacted them. They don't know anything about the jargon. They don't know anything about how everything works, but yet somehow they're being impacted by that. How does this happen?
Well, one of the problems is we have organizations, we have consolidation in the financial and other businesses, which make these businesses too big to fail. That's the first problem, because then they essentially hold the economy hostage, as they do today. So they can say, sure, we can fail, but if we do, we'll take down the economy with us. And so that forces the government to do something, or at least they've got the government convinced they need to do something. So you have huge financial organizations on the brink of disaster. Then you've essentially given them a veto power over the economy.
Yeah. Now, as time's running out here, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, what do you think everyday individuals ought to do? You were encouraging them during the time of the votes to email their congressmen and everything. And what would you, now that this thing is passed, what can we do as just everyday Americans to try to basically make the best of a very horrible situation? What should we do?
Well, you see, there's the problem. I don't think this bailout will work. I think they're going about it all wrong. And so the problem is that this problem could get worse. I think the first thing Americans need to do is to understand how money is made, to understand this financial crisis. And so, because early in the next administration, we're going to be right back at this point. I don't mean sometime, in the far future. I mean spring or summer at the latest. We will be right back to where we started. And then we'll have to do something real.
Yeah.
It can't be another $700 billion bailout package, which, by the way, is not $700 billion. It's a blank check.
Yeah.
What the legislation actually authorizes is no more than $700 billion outstanding at any one time. So they can buy up $500 billion of this toxic paper, and then say they've sold it for $200 billion, and then so they can spend another $200 billion.
Yeah.
So it really is a blank check. The problem we have to address is not the financial economy, and frankly, we can let the financial economy go down because we can easily reconstruct it. Actually, the financial problems are less of a problem that you think. The real problem is that the underlying economy of things is sick.
So we need a change of our worldview.
Yes, we need to get back. You only get rich. A nation only grows prosperous by actually making things.
No.
You know, we grow prosperous on the farms, the forests, the factories, the fisheries, the mines.
Yeah.
That's the original wealth. And if we cannot restore those, then it doesn't matter what happens in the financial sector. And if we do restore those, we can easily restore the financial sector.